let me just remind you that there is a Thanksgiving feast upstairs. Invite all of you to stay and share with us. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
From all the records that we have, and it's completely authentic. All the words are as they were spoken, the characters are the same, and if you keep your eye on it, you will see how. You have to keep repeating history until you get it right. When you see these go up, don't be sparing. Okay? We have got 3 fixed parts, but 3 things are always the same in an Episcopal church. We always have a senior warden, we always have building and grounds, and we always have a director of women's activities. So Alex, Ron, and Delma, you'll see constantly through the years. They will never age, but there they'll be. There we are. She's on. In 1828, Colonel John Johnston makes his introduction and greeting and then begins the report.
I'm pleased to see so many visitors here. I regret to say that our rector, the Reverend Gideon McMillan, who, as you know, is the first to serve St. James Church, is leaving us as he's been forced to find other employment. In the past 2 years he's been with us, the congregation has been negligent in their liberality and efforts to support him, and he's been forced to teach school in addition to his preaching duties. On a happier note, there has been a show of support towards the building fund, and the church has been erected at a cost of $1,400. This has been brought to an early conclusion with the assistance of friends. I have the great pleasure of expressing the thanks and appreciation of everyone present to our absent friends in Philadelphia, who, hearing of our efforts, contributed $500 towards our total. Our dear friends in Swinford, England, have presented us with a fine church bell. The bell tower is to be erected for the cost of $400.
In 1846, Colonel Johnston says,
Having flourished and grown in the last 20 years, we've been blessed by an increase in communicants and now have outgrown our log structure as we number 115 members. We must move to a new church.
We must not be remiss in calling upon the one who made this possible by his generous gift of land and faithful parishioner, Colonel John Johnston.
I would like to ask Mrs. Mitchell, who is the directress of the Female Sewing Benevolent Society, to give her report. Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you. We have furnished clothing to be sent to the missionary station. We propose to send and have completed 12 shirts in the past 2 weeks. 15 ladies sewed, being entertained throughout by interesting mission intelligence read from the books, Mission to the Americans, and China Future Prospects. We have also finished a box of clothing for the Reverend Mr. Payne and his dear family. We plan to continue this assistance to our rector for the next 3 months. As there is a debt in our church, we now concentrate only on ourselves until we are no longer embarrassed. I will now call upon our second directress, Mrs. Adams, to read the institution which reads, It shall be the object of this society to promote the temporal and spiritual interests of the church. Announce the sum of $320.
At the
a girl who had fallen to shame. As the young fellows jeered at her weakness, till they heard an old woman exclaim, there's an old-fashioned church round the corner where the neighbors all gathered one day while the parson was preaching a sermon for a soul that had just passed away. 'Twas a sweet wayward girl from the Bowery who a little adventure had fled. Did the clergyman jeer at her downfall? No, he asked for God's mercy and said, she's only Republican censored. She's mourned me out that she's tossed. She's only a blessing adventured on life's stormy path that fierce and bitter. Do not laugh at her shame and downfall, for a moment just stop and consider that the man was the cause of it all.
Great entertainment. A great way to start a meeting. A lovely way to start a meeting. At this time, I would like to thank Mrs. Slauson for the generous gift of a farm in memory of her daughters, Hattie and Mary. Mrs. Slauson.
Well, thank you very much. Our family is very, very pleased to be able to offer this gift to the people of this parish. Thank you.
We are deeply grateful. Thank you very much. In the way of business, to continue, the ladies declined to loan the vestry the $50 needed for painting, as they take on the responsibility of paying the organist $100 per annum.
Per annum?
I paid well in those days. Our rector, Mr. Brooke, has instituted 2 changes. You will notice that envelopes have been issued to contributors for convenience in making weekly instead of quarterly subscriptions. And to enable collection to be made, I'm asking 2 men to stand forward as ushers to take collection until Christmas. Thank you, Mr. Gray and Mr. Daniels.
But I had it right. He doesn't need it, all right, Ray.
At this time, I wish to ask Mr. Bowden to address the meeting.
Thank you. I wish to make the announcement at this time that we are greatly honored to have the Diocesan Convention in our church this year. And we're equally honored to have all of the churches around who will help us in entertaining all of our guests. I'm sure a great time will be had by all.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Nice to know. It's an honor. I'd like to call on Mrs. O'Farrell. I want to thank you for the...
At the March meeting held in the audience room, as I, the president, need to be away, my vice president, Mrs. Gabriel, called upon our rector, Mr. Brooke, to make the meeting. As Mrs. Brooke, the secretary, was also away, our rector read the minutes. As the slate of officers had resigned, a new slate was selected. They declined to serve. A third group was selected after discussion. During other meetings, the ladies have decided to use all funds raised for the improvement of the basement so that entertainments can be held there more conveniently. We also wish a more efficient sexton can be found.
In 1890, Richard Slauson opened the meeting.
It's fine to see so many of you here. Welcome. I would like to thank Mrs. Gray. I wish she would stand up and acknowledge the organization of the Alder Committee, which consists of 22 members of the Decoration Committee, 3 of the Alder, and 1 in cleaning of the church. Questions for your consideration and ask you to respond by a raising of hands after your careful consideration of these 2 questions. 1, shall we raise the price of pews? Or 2, shall we keep the price as is? Okay, we have a vote on number 1. Number 2? Number 2 has it. We will keep the price as is. Thank you very much. I'll now call on Mr. Rowe to give his report on the condition of our church building. Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, sir. I must bring to your attention that at this time we have $1.38 in our budget and outstanding bills of $115. The church roof does leak. Plastering is needed, and the High Street pavement is too low. To enable us to alleviate this financial embarrassment, we will join together to do as many of these tasks as we are able. But the last time we got together as a committee on these repairs on our working day, it was indeed poorly attended. And so I ask your kind participation in this day to come.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. And I hope, and Mrs. George.
Thank you. I would like to call to your attention the recent edition of the Piqua Gazette, in which we of St. James are referred to as the ultra-fashionable congregation in our good city. We do have standards to maintain, and we ladies most heartily endorse the plans to build a new church in the near future. To this end, the ladies intend all monies raised to go into a building fund and to be used for this purpose and this purpose only.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Southern. And now, it's a time for the entertainment portion, and we are blessed to have with us a noted elocutionist from Cincinnati, Miss Johnston, who will do a reading for us. Miss Johnston.
Thank you very much. I would like to read you a poem.
Miss Bow, their movements.
Santé movement.
Yes, what our elocutionist is saying.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I would now like to recite the evening in a twilight dim with rose, wrinkled with age and drenched with dew. Old Nod, the shepherd, goes. His drowsy flock streams on before him, their fleeces charged with gold, to where the sun's last beam gleams low on Nod, the shepherd's fold. The hedge is quick and green with briar, from their sand the coneys creep, and all the birds that fly in heaven flock, singing home to sleep.
Church and parish house are to be erected immediately at a cost of $15,000. At a recent vestry meeting, it was found to be the sense of this body that we return to our original method of pew rental. Therefore, Mr. H. Nellis will be available to you to sell pews after this meeting. Will you stand, Mr. Nellis?
Thank you, Mr. You folks have desired to change your pew location. So what we're going to do is going to be first come basis. And one thing you want to remember, The seats in front of the pulpit always go first.
Right, good point. Two committees have been formed, one the building committee and one the soliciting committee. This year we proudly announce the addition of 4 ladies to the rank of committee members. Talk about progress. I ask that they stand that we may applaud this willingness to serve. Mrs. John Daniels, Mrs. Margaret Ayers, Mrs. John Francis Babbitt. I now would like to call on the Sunday school superintendent for his report. Will Mr. John Davies please?
Yes, happy to. We are remembering with great pleasure our 2 Sunday school picnics and the tremendous kindness of Mr. and Mrs. Bow, who graciously received us at their home to relax and enjoy a tranquil boat ride on the lake. The lawn of the suburban home of Mr. Bow was ablaze with electric light and large and small Chinese lanterns. The sweet strains of music discoursed all through the evening as the lighted boats were sailing up and down the water. For a moment, we allowed ourselves to visit dreamland. We were in far-off Venice, and we stood upon spacious porches, enraptured with the beauty and brightness of the scene. Everyone seemed to answer each other's thoughts by glances and smiles.
Beautiful. I'll now call on Mrs. Ida Simpkinson to present the report of the Mite Society. Mrs. Simpkinson.
Thank you. The ladies are happy to report the great success of the recent production in the Town Hall of the Congress of Nations. The hand organ was a pleasure to all the hundreds in attendance. Enough money was contributed that we are able to almost pay off the church debt. We must thank Miss Bull, who trained the 150 children who raised their voices in song as we joined the members of the Troy Trinity Episcopal Mission in the production of the opera Egypt. Though Troy provided all the adult singers, the performance was enriched and enlivened by the fresh young voices and faces of these little ones so well trained by their dear teacher, Miss Bull.
Stand up, Miss Bull.
In 1910, Mr. Rowe opened the meeting.
Good evening. Mr. Newman, our rector, finds that due to many calls on his purse by the poor, it has become necessary for him to have monies of the church to be used at his discretion. Therefore, the vestry has approved the use of the money on the alms plate on Communion Sunday be given to Mr. Newman for this purpose. Turning to the matter of the dispensation of Mr. French's pew, I will ask Judge Jones to report on this matter. Your Honor?
Just to give you a little background on this delicate situation, Mr. French purchased this pew after the payment became delinquent. A lady parishioner is desirous of reclaiming the pew, but it's the sense of this vestry that the pew, pew 18, is fairly purchased by Mr. French, who therefore will retain it, and a listing of available pews will be sent to the other parishioner for a perusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Jones. I'll now call on Alfred Flesh for a report on the building.
Thank you, sir. The roof is leaking. As the roof is so new, it can only be concluded that workmanship was inadequate. Therefore, I have written a note to the roofers to return and repair and renovate the roof at once.
Thank you, Mr. Flesh. Call on speaking for the Daughters of the Church for a report by Lola Jones.
Of greatest importance is the news that, after much discussion, we find pleasure in changing the name of this organization to the Chancel Guild. Our high aims and ideals will be maintained as we fulfill our many duties. I will ask my associate, Ms. Ida Mae Farley, to report our activities.
We have held several cake and candy dresses for Indian girls, while Miss Allison read Ramona to us. We have at last filled all our back orders for tissue paper sweet peas. These meetings during which we made these pretty flowers are a memory of joy and laughter.
Thank you. Thank you both and your committee for such good work they've done. I'd now like to call on a member of the music committee, Mr. J.W. Brown. Mr. Brown?
It's you. You're Brown.
Ron Brown.
Ron Brown.
The class request that he convey their thanks to the vestry for the enjoyable dance held in their honor. It was an evening to recall fondly for many years to come.
Thank you. You know, we have a new literary club, the Round Table, and they've had such a happy entertainment recently that they wish to share it with us. So I'll call upon Mrs. Louise McKinney to recall that meeting to set the scene. Mrs. McKinney?
As the meeting was rather quiet, we called on the Miss Catchums. They played for us Marching Through Georgia and Spanish Landing. It so intensely stimulated our patriotic fever that it was our desire that you too may be stirred by the Miss Catchum's joyous music. Miss Catchums.
In 1930, Mr. Davis was senior warden.
I have to report that $8,000 is $1,000 in delinquency. Therefore, the sense of the vestry is that it's become necessary to take out one of the telephones of the church, one at the rectory, and the headsets are to be of a lower price. A member of the vestry has proposed that we borrow $700 so that we can start the year with a clean slate. I now like to call on Mrs. Angus Campbell regarding St. Margaret's Guild.
Thank you. St. Margaret's Guild would like to express to Mr. W.W. Wood the thanks of all who attended the circus carnival at his lovely home. Even a boxing ring was included, and fisticuffs provided many stirring and exciting moments.
Wilson, stand up.
This year, the pancake social will be held at noon. We trust everyone will enjoy the new hours, and the success of the project will be even greater than in the years past. A new group has been formed. They are a social gathering coming together on Thursday night. The women of St. Margaret's Guild and the women of St. James, the St. James ladies president being Mrs. Slocum, have joined together to send away many boxes of clothing to missions. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I would like to call now on Mr. John Reinmiller to report on the Inasmuch Society.
Members of poor citizens of our town. They are learning to sew, to cook, and to care for their children. For example, at the last meeting, we had 9 dozen baby napkins and baby wrappers and threaded needed elastic in the 12 dozen bloomers kindly given to us by the J.W. Brown store. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to call on one of the newest groups in our church, the young people who belong to the Cairo Society, and I'd like young Alfred Flesh to come up and say a few words. Is young Alfred here?
Alfred. That's Slocum.
That's you. That's me.
You were late. You're in.
As an aside, I would like to say that this is Alex's brother.
I too would like to thank Mr. Wood and all the other adults who prepared the circus. We enjoyed helping. We also enjoyed convention in Columbus, and our basketball team hopes to do better next year. The Cheerio players are putting on another play under the supervision of our leaders, Miss Brindley and Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you, Alfie.
In 1953, Mr. A.L. Flesh. What relationship?
That's Alfie's father, my father.
Open the meeting.
I'm happy to open this meeting with the good news that Mr. Ray Vandergrift is able to obtain a fire escape for us from the Piqua Elk Society building. Though after discussion we came to the conclusion that a new one from Piqua Steel Company will be stronger and safer. Mr. Vandergrift will take care of this for us. At this time, I'll call upon Mr. Raleigh Alexander for his report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm sorry to say that the recent cleaning and painting day was not very well attended, as we wished. So another day has been scheduled. Also, the organ has broken down again, and was wired together temporarily. So I've asked Mr. Sullenbarger to contact Mr. Vandergrift, who will contact the organ man from Chicago to fix it.
In 1954, Mr. Vandergrift Senior Warden says,
I'm happy to say that we formed a most important men's group, the Brotherhood of St. Andrews. May we have a report from Mr. Alexander? Raleigh?
During the vestry meeting, there was again talk of putting the fire escape in. The roof needs repairs and can be made perfect for between $500 and $1,000.
Thank you, Raleigh. I'd like to call on Miss Nellie McCabe for the Women of St. James.
The women of St. James have decided to have the prayer boards padded with rubberized hair.
in May 1955, once again there was talk of putting a fire escape in.
And the roof is in need of repair.
June 1955. Once again, there was talk of putting the fire escape in.
And the roof was needing of repair.
In July, once again there was talk of putting the fire escape in.
And the roof needs to be repaired.
August, once again, there was talk of putting the fire escape in.
And the roof needs to be repaired.
September, once again there was talk of putting the fire escape in.
And the roof needs to be repaired.
October, once again, there was talk of putting the fire escape in.
Until in November of 1955.
Mr. Alexander, do you have anything to report?
The fire escape has been installed. And a new tile roof has been authorized at a cost of $3,632.66 and $1,000 to repair the bell tower.
Hooray!